Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders is making the call for a single-payer healthcare system. Now, he was on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos on Sunday morning. Say that 3 times fast. And he said that he would move for a Medicare for all single-payer system. And this is, of course, being on the heels of the decision that saved Obamacare in the courts. Now, let's listen to some of that interview and then talk a little bit more about how Americans feel about a single-payer healthcare system. Let's take a look.
You've consistently called for a single-payer system, Medicare, for everyone. Now, if you were president, would you continue to fight for that? And is that responsible? Would it be a more effective use of your time and energy, presidential resources, to actually strengthen the Obamacare that is already in place?
Well, let me just say this. I've not been a great fan of the Supreme Court. Their decision on Citizens United, opening up the opportunity for billionaires to buy elections, will go down in history as one of the worst decisions ever made. But I applaud them for the 2 decisions they made this week on the Affordable Care Act, on gay marriage. In terms of the Affordable Care Act, I'm on the committee that helped write that bill. This was really a no-brainer. Nobody thought that we should look at the exchanges, federal exchanges, any differently than state exchanges. But here's the point. Today, despite the gains of the Affordable Care Act, which I certainly voted for, we still have 35 million Americans without any health insurance and many more who are underinsured. Meanwhile, we end up spending almost twice as much per capita on health care as do the people of any other country. So I do believe, George, that we need to join the rest of the industrialized world.
So he points out some very serious issues with the Affordable Care Act. Of course, that's what happens when you have a for-profit healthcare system. Basically, that's a giveaway to very, very large multinational corporations. In this instance, the insurance companies. Now, how do the American public feel about Medicare, about a Medicare for all system, single-payer healthcare, or even a public option? So there are some interesting polls on this, and it was comes from the Progressive Change Committee. Now, they took a look at this poll, if I can find it here. 3 areas in which they asked an important question related to a single-payer healthcare system. They asked 1,500 people, likely voters of all different party affiliations, so Democrats, Republicans, independents, on different issues. And according to these polls, the results of this is that the American public largely agrees with Bernie Sanders, but actually more people are interested in a single-payer, a public option for health care, which of course would be the natural step above the Affordable Care Act and a step towards a single-payer system. So let's get to the poll results. Now, this one's interesting because this is one thing that Sanders and a lot of people who are calling for a Medicare for all system harp on, and that's the allowing the government to negotiate drug prices with corporations. Right now, Medicare, as it stands, can't do that. So a lot of their costs, you have to understand that a lot of the cost of Medicare is that they cannot negotiate drug prices with these corporations, so they can charge whatever they want. That's why a bag of saline water essentially costs probably somewhere around $50 to $100. I'm serious. It's very, very expensive to get a bag of water. So let's go in here to the results. Now, 79% of Americans support being able to negotiate drug prices with some of these corporations. Now, 12% oppose being able to negotiate. No, we want the drug prices. We want drug companies to dictate prices to the government so that they can make an immense profit. All right, well, 12% of Americans apparently love that. I don't know who they are, but nonetheless, maybe they have a stake in this. And 9% are neutral on this, which I assume they have. I don't know. I don't know if they should. I don't know if they shouldn't. I guess right now I haven't made the decision. All right, so let's break that down by party. 89% of Democrats say, absolutely, let's negotiate drug prices. 76% of Republicans and 70% of independent voters. Now, interestingly enough, that independents also had the largest people opposed to being able to negotiate drug prices with some of these corporations. That's very interesting. It stands at 21%, even higher than Republicans. Very, very interesting. Let's talk about Medicare buy-in for all, which basically means is the public option that we could have had with the Affordable Care Act. So how do Americans feel about a public option? Well, it turns out that overall, according to this poll, 71% of Americans support a public option. 13% oppose and 14% are neutral, which means essentially that they're not sure. So let's break it down by party. Democrats, of course, 77% of Democrats say, yes, let's have a public option. 63% of Republicans say, let's have a public option. 18% opposed. And 60% aren't sure. So 16%, which is actually the largest amount of the people in the not sure category. And it's almost as large as the people who say they oppose this. 16 to 18%. That's a 2% difference. That's very interesting. Now, when it comes to independents, 71% say, yes, let's have a public option. Which, as far as opposed and neutral, they're pretty much neck and neck, both at 13%. Now, what about a single-payer healthcare system? What Bernie Sanders is talking about. Are the American people on board? Well, it seems to be a very contentious issue, with 51% of Americans, a slim majority, saying, yes, we support a single-payer healthcare system via Medicare. And let me get to the question here. It says, enact a national health plan in which all Americans would get their insurance through an expanded universal form of Medicare. So it's very plain language. You understand what they're talking about here. Expand it through Medicare. Everybody gets Medicare, and that's it. Government insurance through Medicare. 51% of Americans still say yes, absolutely. 36% of Americans oppose, and only 12% are neutral. Okay, break it down by party. Now, this isn't going to shock anybody. 79% of Democrats say yes, single-payer Medicare for all. Great. 23% of Republicans say yes. 61% say absolutely not. No government health care. Okay, understand. So we kind of figured that one out already. All right. We know that Republicans are fundamentally opposed to Medicare for all, though oddly enough, a lot of the people who are on Medicare are elderly people, and they love it. It's kind of interesting. I love it. It works great for me. But as far as expanding it to everybody else, no. I love my Medicare. But you can have it. Very interesting. It's kind of like the people who held up the signs, get your government hands off my health care. Interesting. Now, independents are pretty closely split on this one. 45% in favor, 43% opposed. Now, I'm sure what I see for the future, and this is speculation, of course, on my part, is that as the Affordable Care Act continues to kick in, more people get covered, and if it ever expands to a public option, I think you'll see some of these numbers rise. And of course, it depends on implementation, how many roadblocks are put into place, how effective we create this system to be. But I think if everything is done well and done right, you'll see these numbers increase. And again, that's assuming we could even do it in the first place and get Republicans on board. That doesn't seem very likely. But nonetheless, very interesting results. And it just further shows that Bernie Sanders does represent the majority of Americans, and that his ideas aren't as extreme as Hillary Clinton supporters and especially Claire McCaskill and others point them out to be.